The Fokker F-28 Friendship is one of the most iconic and recognizable early regional jets ever produced. First flown in 1967, the aircraft would be employed worldwide in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia by both airlines and the military. In total, 4 different variants would be developed, with passenger sizes ranging from 70 to 85. All 4 variants are available in the Just Flight F-28 Professional. The aircraft would remain in constant production until 1987, and a total of 241 units were actually delivered. The last airline to operate the F-28 would be based out of Kenya, and they would finally retire the aircraft in 1991, citing a lack of trained pilots to actually fly the plane. Fokker would develop a replacement for the F-70 in the 1980s, and it would be designated the F-70 and the F-100. Coincidentally, Just Flight planned on releasing their F-70 and 100 Professional series in the near future. The F-28 version 2 comes with 2 different variants, one for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and a fully compatible version for 2024. It includes the UNS-1 FMS with SimBrief integration and also an altitude pre-select and hold. So come join me as we learn how to fly the F-28 by Just Flight. Welcome back to the channel, fellow aviators, to episode 5 of Fly the Line, as I bring you a first look at the F-28 version 2. Before we get started, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment if you found this content useful and I've earned your subscription today. As always, down below in the description, you will find a link to my Discord, and I'd love to have you on board to talk some aviation, share some probably inappropriate memes, and do some general flying. All right, so if you flew the RJ Professional or watched any of my stuff, you will know that the heart of the software resides in their included EFB. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it's pretty basic and standard. You just click on the cogwheel up here and you can do everything from adding antennas on to the engine hush kit, or probably most importantly, the UNS FMS selection or the GPS 430, or none if you want to go old school and hardcore, right? You can also take off the altitude pre-select. You'll find all that information here. So I just wanted to point that out real quickly. This is your first time in a Just Flight aircraft. It also has some SimBrief integration. If we hit on OFP, you'll see we'll have our flight plan. We're heading down to Milan from Frankfurt. We'll have our cruise altitude, block fuel, all that kind of good stuff. We can pick up our weather. We can actually get our OFP right here. And if we go back to the aircraft, you'll see, do you want to import the SimBrief payload? So we'll import that. Now, I have had some issues with kind of getting the FMS flight plan to get in there. And so I've just found it's quicker and easier and more reliable if I do it manually. Which brings me to my first point. I think I will probably cover the FMS programming in a second video. I hate to break it up, but I got a feeling this is going to be a relatively long episode. It's actually not that complicated of an aircraft to get started, though if you look at the checklist, it is exceptionally long. I think I printed out one from Flight Sim TO and it was 6 pages. So there'll be no crying in this episode. It's actually fairly simple. It's actually mostly just checking stuff. And so as always, when I do one of these kind of first look or we do a cold dark start, I kind of like to point everything out for you guys so you know where it's all at. But once you've kind of gone through the process a couple times, you could probably get through this startup sequence pretty simply. Also, kind of where I'm sitting is my usual gate here in Frankfurt, and there is aircraft that goes back and forth. So I'm going to take care of kind of like the FMS programming, the refueling and passenger boarding kind of off camera. because it gets exceptionally loud as I'm trying to yell over the jet that's right behind me running up its engines for some bizarre reason. Okay, so if you guys have flown with me before, you know one of the very first things, or one of the most important things we want to do, is apply power to the aircraft. So we're going to come up here. At the same time, we can open up our EFB and we can start the process. Okay, so applying power to the aircraft. The very first thing you want to do is come over to the DC bus, and we'll just select battery 1. We'll select battery 2, and we're just checking that we have the required voltage. Just needs to be in the green arc. We'll come over here to the battery switch, flip that on, and then we are going to do the fire extinguisher check. So what we're going to do is right here, as I hover over it, we're just going to hold it, pull it to the left, and we need to do it about 5 seconds or until the light comes on. So here we go. Light comes on, then we hit reset, and then that's taken care of. So we'll just kind of click through these things at the same time. It's really nice that they included an interactive checklist. So if you ever are going through the process and get a little bit confused, you can find almost everything you're going to need. All right, so let's come back up to here. Just need to pan up a little bit, and we will get to the APU. So we'll put the APU main switch on. Now, it's going to tell you need to wait about 10 seconds for it to do its kind of testing. I don't really think you do, to be perfectly honest with you, but that is not uncommon. For instance, in the Airbus, when I put the apply power to the APU, it runs through a bit, and it which is a bit test, and it goes through. I don't know, it takes about 3 to 4 seconds before you're allowed to start the APU. So that's kind of standard. So what you want to do at this point, just want to ensure that the generator 3 light is on, which is obviously right next to the main switch, and that the generator switch is in the off position. We're then going to come over to the air conditioning panel, and we are going to select one of these switches into the on position. It doesn't have enough power, the APU, bleed air, to supply both air to the cabin and to the cockpit. So since I'm an exceptionally nice guy, we will let the cabin be cooled down and not the cockpit. In the real world, it might be a little bit different. All right, so we've gone through that process. APU switch is off. Air conditioning main switch, 1 off, 1 on. That's what we've just done. And then we're just going to hit the APU start button, which is right here, and we'll click. And as always, we're just looking for an increase in RM and an increase in our turbine temperature, right about 45%. The light should click off right there. And we're just going to wait till we get a complete APU start. So we go through here, APU start button pressed, TGT and RPM rise, APU start button extinguished at 45%, and power stabilized. At this point, we're just going to come over here and put our gen switch on, and you'll hear we now have power to the aircraft. We can come over here and turn on the APU air on. We get power to, or air to the cabin, as you hear that. And then we'll come down here and we will turn on both of our avionics master switches. And if we look right here, we'll want to hit the power button and get the power supplied to the FMS, which also controls our radios, which is kind of a good point. You can kind of see here, I'm pretty happy with the textures, but if you look right at like the radios, they've really never updated the textures on the numbers. So if you're looking at COM 1, it's actually kind of blurry. Same thing with the transponder. We'll go ahead and select accept here. If I tend to use say intentions when I'm flying, and I'll just use the auto sequence button to change my frequencies. You can either use the frequency here to change frequencies, or if you want, they've made it a little bit easier and you can tune frequencies right inside here. Just click it and use it. So however you like to do it. So let's come back to nav there. All right, so we've got radio master switch is on. And now we have completed applying power to the aircraft checklist. All right, so pre-flight checklist, we're going to go right back up to the top of the panel here. And it's actually organized the checklist here pretty simply. We're going to come over to the electrical power panel, which is right here. And we're just going to make sure that our Gen 1 and Gen 2 lights are on, because there's nothing supplying electrical power. We can come down here and check the lights here. Turn them on and off. And then we just want to make sure all the guards are in the closed position. So, as I mentioned, I'm going through this kind of slowly, but if you came to the aircraft, you're going to find it in this configuration all the time. So most of these things we're kind of almost just checking. If you wanted to use ground power, for instance, if you wanted to play with the FMS and do some programming, you would come down here, use this switch, and we could apply ground power that way. So, all right, so next thing on the list, we are going to come down here and put our emergency light switch into the armed position. And then constant speed on the drives, which is right here. You see they're actually closed and safety wired. So that, once again, that's just a check. We're going to come back up here to the engine panel, and we want the starter master switch off. Ignition switch is normal starter valve light test, right? So we're just going to come here to this panel right here. This is in the off position. You can click the light, make sure it's off. Just need to double click with my mouse, and that works. Bleed air supply check. We'll come up here. This is the bleed air supply, and once again, we want to check the lights. And we're going to be in the on and auto position. Air conditioning page, once again, we're right down here. And so we're going to have one in the on position, and once again, we can check all the lights. As you see, like I said, a lot of this stuff's just kind of checking. This is where you would change the cabin temperature if you like. This switch right here, you can manually adjust it if you want it cold, hot, auto. We just want to leave it in the auto position, and these two guards are closed. Airfoil anti-icing panel, which is this one right here. Once again, going to start sounding like a broken record. We're going to check all the lights. Guards are closed. Off reset position. We want this anti-ice PA check right here. We're just going to want that in the normal on position. And then pitot and vane heat check, selector switches off, lights are on. There we go. That is their pitot heat, vane selector switches are right there. Windshield heating check, which is this one right here, and you want this windshield heat priority, left or right. We want it on the left-hand side for the pilot. What do we say about the FO? No one cares about him. So get in trouble. All right, pressurization panel check, manual dump close, lock wire dump, ram air guards closed, test all caution lights, right? Here we are right here. This is our control panel. We can zoom. Let me just get in here. We'll zoom in a little closer. We're going to want to set our altitude. You see the inner one with 22, 25, 29,000, which we're scheduled to cruise at. We'll set it at 1,000 above that. You want this arrow pointing into the up position. But once again, that should be what you end up with when you come to the aircraft. You just need to adjust that. It is not automatic. It will turn our fasten seatbelts on and our no smoking sign on. All right. Next is the glare shield panel. Let's go here, and I'll just pan up here. This is obviously our glare shield panel. Nav set. Once again, here is our nav, so you can control it here or through the FMS, as I showed you earlier. Nav set, we'll be using an RNAV out of here, so we don't need to make any adjustments. Fire control guards, 1, 2, and our APU closed. Fuel shutoff is to right to the next. You should see open. These will actually change if we need it. And our GPWIS system right here.
Glide slope. Pull up.
All right, let's come over to the pilot station and left-hand side, central warning test button, and confirm all lights. So it's just going to come down here. We're going to hit the test button. All the lights come on. We'll need to reset that button right there. Nose wheel steering link is in the on position, which is right here. If I use my rudder pedals, we see that works. And our alternate wheel forward right here in that position. Let's look down here. We'll zoom in just a little bit. And now we can do the left-hand instrument panel. All indicators. Right, that checks off. Speed, altitude, check right here. So right here, if you look at the artificial horizon, I'll click the up. We'll click down. And you're going to see, as we get into flight, that's how we're going to kind of measure some of our speed. I don't know. It was the 1960s. Don't ask me why they put that in there. But I guess at a real quick glance, you can check if you're on speed just by looking at the artificial horizon, right? You don't have to, I guess it would help theoretically in your cross-check capability that you wouldn't have to go from artificial horizon to the airspeed, back to artificial horizon, down to the DG, back to artificial horizon. That's kind of an instrument scan technique I'm kind of going through you real quick. I guess that kind of would eliminate the check to your left to know if you were on speed or not, especially if you're on an ILS, by using that symbol. But you'll see that in just a little bit. All right, static pressure is normal. That's right here in that position. Compass up for DG. It's kind of right behind here, but it's compass up for DG as that switch is closed. And our electric pumps, check the switches are closed. So here's our electric pump 1 and number 2. While we're doing this, we want to get a hold of ourselves, but our head, that controls our hydraulic pressure just to the right of those switches. You can see those 4 gauges right there. This aircraft does have hydraulic modeling, which is really neat. So I would put it as a high fidelity aircraft, maybe not study level. And the reason I say that is the circuit breakers aren't modeled. There's a couple other things, but for the most part, all the major systems are. And if you turn off the hydraulics, you'll find the aircraft is a lot sluggish. So it is modeled pretty well. In any event, you want to make sure that the hydraulic pressure down at the bottom is in the green arc. If you come out to the aircraft for whatever reason, maybe you're doing a couple flights and the hydraulic pressure kind of dropped. If you drop the parking brake and you're not attached to the tug, the aircraft will roll. And because you have no hydraulic pressure, you won't be able, the brakes will not work. So in that instance, you just kind of lift the guard here and bring up the pressure. You'll see, of course, as soon as we turn this off, what we're looking is the brake pressure down here to the underneath the bottom. We got brake and alternate brake underneath the main hydraulic switch. So we'll turn that off. So that checks out. Skin control right here. This is where I do have a little bit of a bug. We switch it left and right, and that's skid control right here. Light right to the left of it should be lighting up, and for whatever reason, at least for me, it does not. All right, let's move over to the central panel here, and what we want to see is the flight control is lit up. The hydraulic pumps are lit up, of course. These are in the up and on position, and then we can go through and check each of the lights to confirm that they work. There's our hydraulic test, low tank pressure lights. Fuel pressure lights are on right here. Those are on. And fuel filter ice lights you're going to test. We're just going to come over here and once again check that the light works. We're going to test the engine warning. So all you got to do is press it once right here. Check the other one. And then we're going to do we're going to do what's it called, the TVI check, which is just your engine vibration check. And if you look just at the very bottom of the switches here, I'm going to check it. I'll put it in post and make sure it goes up to right about 3.5. That checks. We set our caution lights to bright or dim. Fuel quantity indicator test reset to 0. Right here, it's going to be hard to see. I don't know if you can see that highlighted right here. We're going to want to press that and bring that to 0. Lift dumpers are right here. Those are basically your spoilers. All you got to do is make sure that it's in that position right here. And you should see crossed lift dumpers right here. Oops. Right there. I'll point that out. Your lift dumpers need to be in the in position. Really don't have to do anything. And now the TTC switches. Let's go ahead and move our throttle here. These are the TTC switches, and for takeoff, you want them in the up position. Once we get to our thrust reduction altitude, we will switch them into the off position. But for now, we just leave them in the up position right there. Speed brake, of course, just want to make sure you got it modeled, but there you go. Fully up. Flaps is your flap control right here, and there is your flap control, which I will point out in post. Let's get rid of that warning. We'll come back to here. Cross feed check. We're going to make sure this is in the off position and the light is off. And then we'll just do the booster pumps. It's going to tell you to switch them on and off, but the next thing we're going to do here in a little bit is the checklist. So we're just going to turn them on and leave them. So I'll deviate from the checklist a little bit. Center tank transfer pumps, we don't have any center tank pumps on. Down here, we've got a very colorful light switches going on, but we can go ahead and turn on our nav lights, strobe lights, and anti-collision, top and bottom. Now, when this aircraft was initially developed, it would tell you don't turn any of these lights on until just before engine start, but I don't pay for the light switches, and the electrical, at least in this model, will cover it, so we will do that. Communications, we will set and check. I'll do that in a couple minutes here as I bring in Beyond ATC and get everything all programmed and ready to go. Autopilot, remove that right there. Check roll pitch, channel switches in and yaw dampener right here. So what we're checking is these right here, and this is off. There's our autopilot right there, it is off. And then hydraulic flight control check. These are our 8 hydraulic flight controls up in the on position, and all 8 lights are on. And gust lock is right here, off, on. Let's go ahead and turn. Checklist tells you to leave it on. We're going to be starting here in a moment. I guess we'll do the checklist. And right here is the alternate braking right there. So now we've completed that section. Now we need to move over to the right-hand instrument panel. Let's come here. In the right hand, the FO section. What did I tell you about the FO? No one cares. All right, all indicators. We're checking all these. These are all just kind of standard. Static pressure, 2 on this side. Door lights, those light up. LG warning switch is normal and guard is closed. Here's the LG warning switch. LG warning switch. The only time you would ever move that is if you're not landing at like flaps. Was it 42 or full flaps? If let's say you're only using, 2 notches of flaps or whatever, you'd switch that up. It would avoid probably some beeping and horns for you. And compass up, same thing on our side. There it is right there. And over on the side panel, central warning test. You can kind of see it right here. Click all those on. Click that off. Cabin ventilation. Shut off normal PAX oxygen mask release. Just come over here. You can hear that turn on. And flight recorder is this section. I don't know if you can even see it right here. Just going around it here. That is the flight recorder section, which I am not going to touch. And now we have done our pre-flight check. Let's come back to here. All right. So our departure check now. Circuit breakers are in. They are all behind us and they are not modeled. So it looks pretty, but there's really not a lot we can do with that. Oxygen we've just turned on. And now these will run pretty quickly here. APU air switch is on. Windshield heating low. Once again, you need to be below negative 20 degrees. We don't have that. Seatbelt signs are on. Central warning test, we did that. Skid control, we did do that. Engine fire warning test, we've done that. Fuel consumption, aircraft weight. And so at this point, I think it's probably a pretty good idea to stop. I will get back to you in just a moment. At this point, they probably need to get the aircraft all boarded up because we can't confirm the aircraft weight because we have no fuel or passenger on board. So let me get the passengers on board. Let me get say intentions fired up, and I will see you in just a second. All right, everybody, I am back with you in the break. I have got the passengers up and boarded. I've got the fuel on board. I have picked up the ATIS and called for the clearance. I put it into the FMS. So let's just go ahead and continue on. So the aircraft weight is now set. The TTC switches, we already checked that. Nav lights are checked, and the flight recorder, I'm not doing that. That is set. All right, before starting engine check, once again, these are actually turned to be checks. So rudder pedals, set and adjusted, electrical power. We can come up here. These are all modeled, so we can go all the way around. You're just looking to make sure everything is in the green. All right, brake pressure. We already kind of talked about that earlier. Let me zoom in. You see brake pressure and alternate brake pressure. 1600 or in the green arc is going to check. Fuel quantity. You check that. Pressurization set above 1,000 feet. We've done that earlier. Thrust index. All right, so let's come over and talk about the thrust index, which is going to be, let me just zoom in a little bit. All right, so the thrust index, you see it's set at 169. So if you're familiar with flying the Airbus or some other aircraft, there is a way that you can reduce the amount of available thrust at takeoff, right? If you're in the Airbus, we've traditionally used Flex MCT as opposed to TOGA. In this aircraft, you would actually need to consult a chart, and in the manual, you will find a thrust index chart that takes into account altitude, temperature, and then you can make some adjustments from there. Because it's a just flight aircraft, you may not be surprised that they already set this for you.
Clearance, good evening, Malaysian
So
127, request IFR clearance to Kuala Lumpur with information Tango.
Let me just get rid of that. Okay, hopefully that is a different frequency. All right, so as I was saying, that number of 169 is already preset for you, so you don't actually have to make any adjustments. But if you would like to, let's say, derate the engines yourself, maybe take off at 90% thrust or 95% thrust, you can work it out on the tables. But that's, when they say the thrust index, that's exactly what they're talking about right there. All right, let's come back out here. Nav aids set via VHF. Nothing there. Ship's papers. Funny story, we need those when we go to Mexico, and we have forgotten them. Takeoff data is set. Once again, we'll come down here, and because it is a just flight air, if you remember from the RJ Professional, what you can do is you take your cursor, and as we look at the airspeed indicator, what you're going to see, flaps 11 is our preferred takeoff flap setting. So you just come up here, press it, and you can see it brings up all of our airspeed guides, right? So that is that. We'll do this exact same thing for landing for flaps 42. On approach, we will go down and select the 42 with our cursor, and it'll bring in all of our speeds in for us. All right, gust lock removed. Finally to that section, so we'll remove the gust lock, which now our controls will work. And windows and doors are secured. All right, so we have now completed the before start check. At least up to that. I'm sorry, we've got a couple more things here. Cleared for start. So we put our anti-collision lights and switches on. We've done that. Throttle levers to idle. These are our throttle levers right there. Or I'm sorry, our throttle levers are right here. Read ahead. Our HP fuel valves right here. Booster pump switches on. We've done that previously. And starter master switch on. So what we're going to do is, as we come up here, we're going to hit the starter switch. We're going to be looking for around 20 15 to 20% on the pressure, and I'll point that out. And then we will move our levers into the start position once we get to either 50% or 400 degrees, and we'll just move into start. So it's a very, very simple procedure. All right, so let's go ahead and get these started. So we'll come up here. We will turn our engine start switch on, and then we'll start number 2 first. So number 2 on. You hear the change. We'll come down to 3. Just pan up just a little bit, and we're looking right there, right at 10%. 15, so we're good to start there. So as always wait just a second. A little bit more airflow makes a cooler start. We get our flashing indicator. Igniter light is on. Oil engine tube pressure is rising, and it is. Let's get about 45, 47%. You'll hear the generators trip in. Didn't really click for us, but it happened. 50%, we'll bring it right up there, and that is how we start our engines. All right, so we can go through all that. That is everything for engine start number 2, and now we are going to repeat for number 1. And 15, start right there. I don't think they've actually modeled the like hot starts as you see me do with a lot of the black square aircraft, so it probably doesn't matter. Anyways, we got the our igniter lights are on and flashing. Engine oil pressure is rising. It is. And coming up on either 400 degrees or 50%. There, and igniter light goes out, and we can move that fully forward position. All right, central warning, check all lights are extinguished. All right, so let's come back to here, wrong one. All the warning lights are extinguished. HP fuel valves levers are open. Fuel pressure lights are out, and they are. Igniter lights are out, starter valve lights out, starter master switchers are off, generator lights. And up here, make sure those are out. Gen 3, now we can shut down the aircraft. So what we're going to do is we're going to shut down the aircraft, shut down the APU. First thing we do is take the engine master switch to off. We can take the air. We see a slight decrease in the PSI. That is normal. We'll take our generator offline. Light comes on. Master switch to off. We see the RPM shutting down, and we are now secured the APU. All right, and when these things are, let's check AC and DC voltage. We've already done that. Engine anti-icing switch. Don't need them. Windshield icing, don't need it. Pitot, come down to here, and we will put on our pitot heat. Hydraulic supply, once again, we're coming down and checking that we're in the green arcs. We are. Electric pump switches. And then our flight control light, which is right here, make sure that that's out, and it is. And flaps are in the takeoff position, so we'll go once, twice. We can double check in the flap gauge up there that we're in the right spot, and now we can complete that checklist. And our taxi checklist will be, I know guys, it's a lot of stuff, but you'll see it's really not a whole lot of work. It just takes a long time to get through. Flight instruments are set. Trim, this is actually important. We'll come over to here, and you can click with your mouse pointer. Well, if you heard that, very, very slight, it readjusts our trim for us. That's how you do it. sorry about that, pressed the wrong one. Collective tank indicators are black. Collective tank indicators are black, one on each side of the trim. I'll point those out. Flaps are in the takeoff position. Crew briefing. It's just me, myself, and I. And at this point, I think we just need to taxi out. So, once again, wrong button switch. Okay, so let's get rid of right now for the EFB. Let's get rid of that. We can come over to we will connect. We can remove the chocks, come down here, remove the parking brake, and we can push out. So once again, in the real world, you would not probably start at the gate, mostly because they don't want you blowing over carts and all sorts of stuff. And at this point, I know we're really spending a lot of time. So tell you what, let me just go ahead and taxi to the runway, and I will meet you there. There's not a whole lot of stuff we need to do between now and there, and it's a little bit of a hike. So I will catch you all once again in just a few seconds. All right, everybody, I am back holding short of runway 18. Unfortunately, my track IR has completely died on me. I don't know why. I think I'm going to switch over to Toby eye tracking. If anyone has any thoughts on that, let me know down in the comment section, because this seems to happen a lot and it's kind of aggravating. All right, anyways, for our lineup check, it's going to be brake temperature check. APU is already shut down. Lift dumpers. Now we'll come down here and we will push the lift dump in, and now it's switched to ready. That's what we want to see. Flight controls. Check. This is always kind of important when I forget to attach my Bravo Alpha to the desk. Hydraulic pressure is, look down there, is checked in the green arcs. Yaw dampening switch. Ooh, I cannot. It's also screwed up all my cameras, so I'm going to have to pan down here. Yaw dampening. Switch is in. Transponder is on and set. I'm not going to use say intentions. I was actually taxiing out here, and I just realized they keep talking over me. It's be a little more difficult. And our landing light switches 2 and 3. All right, so let's talk about how we need to depart. So the very first thing we want to do is, this is going to be let's get rid of that for now. This is going to be a heading departure. And so this controls our flight directors if you're looking down at our artificial horizon, right? And so we're going to want it on heading, where we're selected. And here, this controls the actual bar itself. And for takeoff, we're generally going to set that right around 10% or 10 degrees. Up here is our actual autopilot modes. All right. So this is how we're going to control the aircraft. Down here is our altitude pre-select. So my initial climb altitude was 7,000 feet. And what we're going to want to do when we engage the autopilot, this is really important. Let me zoom in here. This is our alert button. That's going to give us our 1,000 feet above or below audible tone. Here, our auto on button for pre-select. If you don't engage that, it won't capture the altitude. So every time you change here, you need to come here and make sure that button is armed and illuminated. If you just want to capture whatever altitude you're at, press this button and it'll try to capture that altitude. Once again, here is vertical speed, and we are going to rotate the knob. That would be 1,000 back to 0, 1,000 feet below. Press it, and that's how we can use our vertical speed to control our altitude. So this is a fairly rudimentary autopilot system, and what I mean by that is, hopefully Fritz next door will give us our call outs, and he should tell us thrust is set, I'll release brakes. He'll give us our 80 knot call out. He'll give us our rotate call out, because in this aircraft, V1 and VR V1 is our speed, which we take off no matter the emergency, unless it's a fire or aircraft controllability issue. And VR are the exact same thing. Normally those are different, but in this aircraft, the exact same thing. So we should get an 80 knots. We should get a rotate. We should get a gear up call. We should get a thrust reduction at thrust reduction altitude. We get a climb power call. Hopefully he works. When he works, as you know from the one RJ Professional, it's a really great benefit to us. But if not, if we look at our airspeed indicator, we can see at 125 knots is going to be our V1 VR speed, and we'll just use that as our backup, and then we can climb out. The only limitations we are going to have is we need to stay below 200 knots with our flaps down, and then under 250 knots, under 10,000 feet. And you're going to see up here, we do have an indicated airspeed, but once we do that, we don't control HT stands for our height. So we are going to be in one of these modes. We're going to start off in pitch. We then may graduate over to indicated airspeed once we kind of accelerate to 250 knots, and the aircraft will try to keep it. But if we're in our indicated airspeed mode, we aren't maintaining altitude. So obviously on climb out, it shouldn't matter for us. We'll be at full power or close to full power as we're climbing up. But once we get to altitude, it'll switch into the HT mode, which means now for us to control speed, we are going to have to make some throttle adjustments. And we're probably going to need to make some throttle adjustments even as we're below 10,000 feet, because it will not, unless I'm in indicated airspeed mode, it will not hold that airspeed. It'll just continue to accelerate, or we're going to have to use our vertical speed to increase or decrease our airspeed. I know it's a lot of stuff, but I just kind of wanted to give you a general heads up. Fortunately, my cameras do not work, so let me get all set up here. And at this point, I think we'll look down here. We will reduce the parking brake, my view set, and we will taxi out to the runway. So I can't pan over to them because my cameras are all busted now that my track IR is not working. But there is no pilot modeling in 2024. If you have this aircraft for 2020, you will get Fritz next door modeled, and you as well. But in 2024, they were having some issues with it, so they opted not to model, at least in this version. All right. And the last thing I should point out here, and hopefully I'll remember to do this in post, is you see that right here, we are on GPS. If we want to switch over, let's say when we make our approach to the ILS, we're going to need to actually hit this switch right here. But when we want to track the GPS, we need to be in GPS mode here, and then we will come up here and select beam, right? But for now, we are on heading mode right here. We look at our official horizon, pointed straight ahead, 10 degrees, and so we can just follow that until we engage the autopilot. All right, so here we go.
Cam crew, please take your seats for takeoff.
I'm going to bring it right up to 100% there, looking at our RPM, so 90.
Cabin is secured for departure.
100%. So he didn't give me my thrust set. Hopefully he will give me my 80 knots. Check.
Rotate.
Little aft pressure, we'll bring it right up to the command bars.
Positive climb. Traffic.
All right, so we select our gear up. It's waiting for about 850 feet or so. It starts to ask us to bring in. So we're coming right up to 200 knots there, so we'll come over and do flaps up.
Clear of conflict. Set climb power.
So there's our set climb power. So we come down here and we take these out. And then we're going to pull back to around 95% or so. And let's go ahead and bring our view outside. I tell you what, not having my camera views sucks. So you see we're already coming up on right around 250 knots. So let's come down here one more time, and we will now engage the autopilot right here. And you see we are in roll and pitch. So it's just going to kind of hold this, whatever I held it at right here. If I want to increase my climb rate, and just kind of trim down a little bit, or increase my speed, I should say. Just using a little bit of. Now we're in roll. Actually, we want to be in beam. You see the GPS light lights up.
Cabin crew have been released to begin their service, but please note that the seatbelt sign is still on.
Now we're at 3,500.
Traffic.
3,500 feet and climbing, and we're going to 7,000. If you remember, if we do nothing, the aircraft's going to blow right through that. So the next thing we want to do is come down here and press altitude, which brings in our alert button and our hold. We're still just a little bit slow, so we can use a little bit of forward trim, or we can select vertical speed, which will level us out. So I probably should have already put my bar up there. We'll use 1,500 feet and see if we continue to accelerate. This kind of wobbling you're seeing is not uncommon. In fact, as I land, I will almost inevitably turn that off. All right, so we're coming up on 250 knots. So let's go ahead and hit indicated airspeed. And now it should hold 250. We can bug for 250 around the airspeed indicator. And now if you look at, remember I told you about the artificial horizon, the slow fast. All right, now we need to start our climb up, which is like 29,000 feet. We've already leveled out here at 7,000. So let's go ahead and we'll just go straight up to 29,000. At this point, we should be controlling indicate airspeed. You see, if you look at the airspeed indicator, it's not super accurate. All right, I actually exceeded 250 there for just a second. We're back right down here at 250 knots. And let us use, or we'll just keep in vertical indicate airspeed mode, and we'll just continue to climb out. So we can only choose one, right? So if I choose vertical speed, then it's going to prioritize vertical speed, not airspeed, right? And since we're below 10,000 feet, what's the most important? Well, staying below 250 knots. So I'm going to hold indicated airspeed until we get above 10,000 feet, which is right there, so we can come up. It's the 70s, so we can let people smoke again.
You are free to move about it.
At this point, what are we coming? About 2,000 feet per minute, so let's dial that in. Actually, I want a little bit less because I'd like to accelerate to, say, maybe 280. And now I'll switch us over to vertical speed mode. Our vertical speed indicator decreases a little bit. I can put in around 300 knots or below our VNE speed as a bug, so I'll see it on the artificial horizon as I get closer. At this point, we are en route. Looking down at the HSI, you can see we have 20 miles to the next fixed, and it's going to fly us all the way to Milan via the GPS route that I imported into, oh, my mistake, into my FMS. So at this stage, we've kind of gone through the takeoff procedure And this is, I'm sure, exceptionally long at this point. So once again, I'm going to cut you out here
Clear of conflict.
until we probably get a little bit closer to Milan, and we'll kind of go through the descent procedure. But there's not really a whole lot to talk about at that stage, right? All I'm going to do is I look at my airspeed. I still haven't really accelerated. I will drop to 1,000. I'm getting that kind of stuttering sound effect. So I don't know if that's my computer or this. I haven't seen that all the time. So all I'm going to do is just use my vertical speed to modulate my airspeed to keep us right under V&E, or around 200 to 300 knots. And as I get a little bit closer, I'll probably even reduce it a little bit more. So anyways, that is the takeoff procedure, and I will see you as we're getting closer to the descent. All right? All right, everybody, I am back with you. We're just going to go ahead and start our descent. Since we are not using say intentions, we're just going to use a little bit of airmanship. So what I need to do is get down to my next fix at around 11,000 feet. We're up at 29,000 feet. So roughly, I need to lose around 20,000 feet or so. And using our rough estimate, we need to start that out at about 60 miles out. So what I'm going to do is bring up our EFD, and I can show you what the descent checklist is going to be, which will be seatbelts will be fastened up here, and put our seatbelts on as we start our descent. Pressurization, we will
Seatbelt signs have been switched on.
come up
Please
here,
remember to
and
keep
it
fasten
is
seatbelt.
right around sea level. So let's bring it all the way down here. It's actually 800 feet, so let's put it right about there. There, so right there. Hard to check out. All right, TT switches. So we'll come down here and put these back. And our crew briefing. So that is it. So at this point, what I want to do is we'll just come here and focus inside here. We're going to dial in 11,000 feet. I'm going to pull back on power here to right around 80% or so. That is for the gear. Silence it right there. And what we're going to do is, looks like vertical speed. And we'll just rotate in until we get to about right around 2,000 feet per minute or so. Right about there. And then we just are going to control our rate of descent, or our airspeed. Our rate of descent's locked in at 2,000 feet per minute. And we're going to control airspeed by our throttle. So we're just watching our airspeed to see if it kind of starts creeping up a little bit, and if it does, we'll just pull out a little bit more power. If we can't hold the speed we want, we can always use our speed brake, but I think this looks good for right about now. And this let me know that I have low power setting with no gear down selected, which is why we actually have that speed brake. It keeps that high pressure up, so we'll just nudge it up a bit. See if we can kind of hold this rate of descent. So that is how we make a descent in the F-28. So relatively simple. And the only thing we're going to need to do next is on final, we'll just have to arm our lift dumpers. Boy, that is going to be annoying. So let's silence that again. And just add a little bit more power. It's just a warning letting me know that I've got a low power setting and I don't have my gear down. So that's how we silence it. Anyways, so I will catch you probably just on final at this point as we're getting ready to arm up the system. And I will see you all in just a few seconds. All right, everybody, I am back with you. You see we're down at around 4,000 feet. We could continue on the entire SID, but there's really no point to fly it all the way around. We've already got our altitude sets, and in the real world, that's exactly what would happen. So what we want to do first here is let's start slowing down, because it's going to be a relatively tight turn. We'll silence that horn again. And if we look at the bottom of the SID, we see we need a heading of 256. So what I want to do at this point is, you see I've got 256 dialed into the PFD, or I'm sorry, down on the HSI. We still are in beam mode, because that's what is controlling this, which means the GPS right here. As we start slowing down a little bit more, use a little bit of speed brake right here. Let's get that very first notch of flaps, because we don't want to go around that turn too fast. It'll be really hard for the aircraft to intercept it. So as we come up on right around 200 knots, we can put our very first notch of flaps in. And right now we're kind of looking for right about 160. Put in our second notch of flaps, and now we are going to go from beam to heading, which will give us a right-hand turn. Now we don't need to be in GPS mode anymore, so we can select our nav source. And if you look down at the HSI, it's now putting in our course of 346, which I have already selected. And now we want to go into glide slope auto, and this will control our glide slope. At this point, we're just going to continue on a little bit further. We're kind of holding right around 160 knots, flaps 2. That's where we want to be. Sorry, that's some Airbus terminology there. Our second notch of flaps. And we're looking to intercept there right around kind of like 425. We need about 200, 210 knots. We're already underneath that, so that looks good. Doesn't look like it's picking up our localizer, so we'll just continue in. We'll start giving ourselves a little bit of an intercept angle. We should have a frequency of 109.9. Let's pull up our chart here, so double check we're on the right frequency. 109.9. So that checks. We are in approach mode. And
Crossbar active.
there we go. Crossbar active. Now we can hit beam. Should track all the way in. We're still a little bit far out, so we should be doing quite okay at this point. The red flags on the PFD, or I'm sorry, PFD, really Airbus terminology there, right on the artificial horizon, and our HSI is letting us know that we still haven't picked up the glide slope yet. Sync up our heading bug. Let's look where we are. So we still have ways to go. Inler is the start of the approach. We need to be above 4,000 feet at 190 knots. We are nice and stable right now. And if we look at our approach plate, Inler's all the way down here. So we still have a little bit to go. So I will probably fast forward this a little bit. Actually, one thing we need to do, which I have not done, forgot is we need to come over here to our landing. And we're going to choose flaps 42. We're going to take our cursor and click right on the airspeed there, 113. It'll change all of our airspeeds, reset our heading bugs to where it needs to be. And now we are actually prepped and ready for the approach. So we still have a bit to go, and I will fast forward you one more time. All right, everybody, I am back with you. You see we're coming up over Inler, which is the initial approach fix. We need to be at above 4,000 feet, at or above 4,000 feet, and we are, and below 190 knots, and we are. If we look down at our autopilot, we are in beam mode with glide slope auto selected. That checks. We are in height mode, and that's fine. The next thing we're going to do here as we get a little bit closer is swap us over to glide. And now if we look down at the panel, we see the light panel, we see that we are in yellow for the glide slope. So those, as we pick up and lock on, those will turn green. If we look at our artificial horizon, you now see that the glide slope is starting to come down. And we have one more half dot of deflection, so we're almost there. At this stage, we can go ahead and drop our gear. Our glide slope is now in green, so it is now captured. And now, there we go, there's our pitch. And it will follow the glide slope all the way down in. But we have 2 notches of flaps in and our gear is down. So we should be able to easily control our airspeed looking, I don't know, right around 65%. It's keeping us top of the white indicator. Looking good. All right, so we already have the airport in sight, so we can go ahead and get rid of this. So we don't need it anymore. And now we're just going to go ahead and fly the rest of our approach on the autopilot. And I will probably fast forward once again until we're just a little bit closer.
Flaps 25.
All right, you just heard the call for the flaps 25. I've put that in, and now I'm looking to bring my speed right onto the yellow indicator on the airspeed indicator. So slowing down a little bit more, pulling out a little bit more power.
Flaps 42.
All right, flaps 42 and our final notch of flaps are in. And now we are definitely pitching right for that yellow hashtag. We look down
Traffic. Traffic.
at our airspeed indicator, see it's coming right on it. Add a little bit more power. Try to keep us in that white bubble.
Come crew, please take your seats one.
All right, so one of the procedures we're going to do is we kind of cross over the threshold. We're going to pull back on the power and then apply full speed brakes. And it's going to require very
Cabin
little,
is secured for
if
arrival.
any, pitch to it. It's really, very first time I landed this, I kind of flared as I would normally do, and I ballooned up, I think, about 100 feet. So very, very slight touch on the flare. All right, airport elevations, right, 748 feet, something like that. So we're about 500 feet.
500.
There we go. There's our call. At this point, I can down here real quick, and I can disengage the autopilot. Should be pretty well trimmed out.
100 feet to minimum.
All right, airspeed is good, so just at this point, a lot of cross-checking.
Minimums. Minimums.
Airspeed good, glide slope is good.
Glide slope.
All right, as we come up over the threshold here, full
50,
power,
40, 30,
full speed brakes.
20, 10,
You see very, very little on the aft on the yoke. Nice and smooth. All right, guys. So I know this has been a really long flight and been a lot of yippity yap, but I think I wanted to cover really thoroughly for you guys. Like I said, I don't think the checklists are that hard to get through, but they are lengthy. But don't let that intimidate you. This is a great aircraft. There's a great sense of, for me at least, satisfaction from being able to use the different modes and use them correctly and maintain proper airspeeds and altitudes. The biggest thing you can probably do, or mistake you will probably make, is as you select that new altitude, not selecting that altitude button right there that I keep pressing once we're on the ground, which is not going to work. So, and I have done it multiple times here where I've selected that altitude and just blown right through it because I forgot to hit that button. So, anyways, let me just go ahead and taxi in, guys. And once again, I appreciate all the support. In the next episode, we are going to deal with the FMS programming. Unfortunately, I thought about maybe adding that or showing a couple things, but with my track IR not working, it screwed up all my cameras as well. So it was almost I was not really able to move even the cameras around the way I needed to. So next episode, we will cover the FMS programming. We will use say intentions, make it a full flight. We will use some more tips and tricks. If you guys have any questions down below, please let me know. Other than that, I will catch you in the next one, and I appreciate all the support. Take care for now. Bye.